Hey everybody, hope you are doing well. Welcome to Communication 3 Public Speaking. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about presentation aids, which is chapter 14. Now, what I wanted to do is preliminarily discuss a couple of things as relating to class. I realized that this class, unexpectedly, just like every other class throughout the semester, has moved to virtual instruction where we're instructing from the internet. And so you don't have that face-to-face connection at the same rate that you would if you were in a classroom. So I wanted to just once again, one more time, to encourage you to say, listen, we'll get through this together. We'll work with you extra hard to make sure you get your assignments in. If you're missing something or if something didn't, isn't coming together for you in the class, or if you're meeting some particular kind of challenge, please reach out to me and let me know. You have my email address, you have my cell number. You can always contact me and we can always figure out a way to make you be successful in this class. I don't want anyone to slip through the cracks. I don't want anyone to feel disappointed as a result of the semester because of the way that it turned out. I realize it's not ideal, but let's try to create something good and positive out of this situation. Now, before I talk about the presentation aids, I also want to give a nod out to our next speech, which is going to be for the persuasive speech. Now, the persuasive speech, what it does is it builds on and it develops on the idea of the informative speech if you choose to do your informative speech on a social issue. Now, most of you did your presentations and your speeches on a particular kind of social issue. So make sure that you understand that you can use the same topic twice. Now, you can't use the same sources twice. You can only use one source from your previous presentation, and the source requirements for this speech is one source more. So it's 5 to 6 sources with the ability to repeat one of your sources. And so the way that persuasive speech is going to work is you're going to, now that you've informed us about a social issue, now you're going to provide some solutions. You're going to create a list of solutions that you can use to solve the problem that you are talking about. So you can still talk a little bit about the problem. You can still talk a little bit about the social issue and briefly define it and explain it again. So you can almost do like a minute long or a minute and a half summary of the informative presentation, and then after that I want you to move on into the solution. So the difference between the informative and the persuasive presentations is that the informative, you just informed us, you told us what the facts were, what it was about, and then the persuasive presentation was much more focused on what are you gonna do, what should be done about it, what you're gonna do about it, or what the class should do about it, what are the list of the solutions that are there. And when saying that, what you're going to do about it, I don't expect you to go out there and solve it or sign petitions or things like that, but you can hypothetically create a hypothetical scenario that if you could do something about it, if you were in a position to do something about it, what would you do? And it might be practical. It might be something such as like pollution, and you could talk about the practicality of using reusable straws and those kinds of things. That could be a solution. So the solutions are plenty. There's tons and tons of information out there for you. So just like with the last presentation, I want one either book source or one book source and one journal article or two journal articles or two book sources. So two sources that are from peer-reviewed, edited works. So that's that. The presentation shouldn't be all that much more difficult. You're pretty much sticking, most of you, to the same topic. And now you're just telling us what the social issue is. So let's start with presentation aids and how you make your speech more engaging and more involving and more interesting for the people around you. Now, I don't know if you've ever seen the inside of a mechanical clock. I don't know, maybe you've had a wristwatch that had clear, like see-through um, the back where you could see how it works. I had a watch like that where it had the back end of it was exposed, so I could see all the gears. And so what happens is that for a watch to work, there's many gears and many components that come together and spin together and come together, and they're by coming together they're able to perform their unique function. And when each part performs its unique function, then the watch is able to move. So for that minute hand or that hour hand to move at all, it actually takes quite a bit of work on the watch's part. It's quite an intricate process. So same thing with presentations. In order for a presentation to work well, in order for a presentation to have that good flow to it, you have to have a lot of things go right. And so one of the things that I want to talk to you about briefly, and this is a nice and short chapter, is the idea of presentation aids. And presentation aids are like those gears. They make the presentation go smoothly together, and it makes it follow a logical and clear order. So let's start from the beginning. So presentation aids. Why do we use presentation aids, the different types of presentation aids, the audience analysis and presentation aids, and then guidelines for preparation. So why do we use presentation aids, the different types of presentation aids, the audience analysis and presentation aids, and then guidelines for preparation. And then one of the things that I'm going to do is I want to remind you of the paper that is due in this class. When it comes down to the paper, you're going to be analyzing the audience in this class, and you're going to be also analyzing the classroom audience. Now, the thing is that happened is that we're not in class, so you didn't get to watch your other partners or peer speeches. Well, over the next couple of days, I'm going to be uploading randomly some of the links that you have given me for your presentations. And so what I want you to do is I want you to find one speech or one presentation that you watch, and then you're going to write feedback on that person. So it's almost as if you were there in the class with them. So that's one thing that there's a heads up for that paper. It's due towards the end of April. Is going to be due in a few weeks. I think April 22nd is the deadline. I'll double check and let you know, but it's in the syllabus. So when it comes down to the audience analysis, you're going to be writing in that paper the analysis of the audience and the qualities of the audience and the characteristics of the audience. And then you're going to give feedback to another student, a peer, on how well or how effectively you think they did. So that's the thing with the paper that you have to keep in mind. So why would we use presentation aids? Well, that answer is actually pretty simple. That presentation aids really give life to a presentation. A picture's worth what? 1,000 words. So it's very helpful, very beneficial to have images and the ability to see visually and to see the words visually, because then you're summarizing and highlighting the most important parts and aspects of the presentation when you're using the presentation aids. So why use presentation aids? For example, I have this picture here of individual talking about motorcycles, and then he goes, listen, look outside, and then he has someone showing off his Harley Davidson and then making the sound of the engine sound and making noise. And the thing is that when you have either a real life presentation aid or a visual representation, it helps people picture and visualize what it is that you're actually talking about, and it greatly enhances your presentation. It makes the audience feel like the message really comes to life. And what it does is when you add this five senses, because you have the five senses, and so when you add things like sight or touch or smell or taste, when you add those kinds of things into the presentation, you're making the presentation come alive in a much more tactile or much more visual level. So what happens is that when you include the right kind of presentation aid at the right time, it can really sway public opinion one way or another. So using presentation aids is extremely powerful. So there's photography competitions, because like different pictures can evoke different emotions. And then when it comes down to the commercials, they have videos. So the pet adoption agency, when it has the sad song playing, the angel song, and you know what I'm talking about, the song that I'm not going to sing to you because I don't want to give you I don't want to hurt your ears, but when it comes down to that song, and then the pets, the animals, the close-up shots of the sad eyes of the puppy dog and the sadness that's in their eyes, all of that is a very powerful use of imagery in order to get the person to pay attention and to be engaged. So that's one of the things that presentations aids do, is they just really make everything come to life. Now, there's different types of presentation aids. So number one type of presentation aids, the speaker and assistant. So you can have somebody who comes in as an assistant to demonstrate your presentation aids. Now, most of you won't do that. Most of you have not done that. because it is a bit of a hassle. It's a little bit of a coordinating, challenge where you're trying to get the presenter in, and then the speaker in, and then the participants to pay attention to the person that is presenting, and then as well as to the person that's up there on stage. So when it comes down to the assistants, it's the hardest to pull off, but it is worth it if you can get the right kind of person in there. So for example, if you have this person here demonstrating the basic move of the guitar playing, and he has the hair. If you look at the picture here, the 2010 air guitar championship runner-up Zed will now demonstrate his basic move, right? And so his key move is to either headbang or do whatever it is that they do in rock concerts. And so when you have the demonstration showing you exactly what it looks like, if this speaker without the hair and all that, well, he has hair, but without the lots of hair, if he's just the one doing the presentation, it's not gonna have the same effect as this one who's in full outfit, who's rocking out, who's got his hair going, who's into this process, right? And same thing here. When climbing, your equipment will keep you safe and secure. So now in this presentation and in this example, that's not really realistic. You can't really rock climb like that. You'll fall, but I think you will at least. But in this case, they're showing that, demonstrating through the assistants and the speaker how to actually climb properly, and the audience is like looking up because it's the rock climber is right above them. So the speaker and assistant, it could be clothing, it could be equipment, it could be acting, it could be reinforcing something, it could be demonstrating something. So all of those things are helpful. And a lot of you did like presentations where you used a certain kind of clothing or a certain kind of outfit to fit your presentation, and some of you used equipment. So those of you who did it on dance, you brought in the shoes, and then some of you showed the nails in the shoes to represent the where the sound comes from when the dance move is made, and the loud tapping sound, where it comes from and why it is the way it is. And it was very informative. So the speaker and the assistant can bring in others, or they can bring in things to enhance the speech message. Now, another thing that I want to mention is that objects and visual images, and this is something that you can use to demonstrate a particular kind of phenomena. So for example, in this first picture, it says observe the rotation, note the momentum, imagine the impact. And so what it has is an example of what happens when a bowling ball is going down and following the laws of gravity. You can actually depict certain aspects and relationships. You can show how something is related to something else. You can summarize data. You can compare the pros and cons. You can show the steps. So a couple of you talked about obstacle course racing and in my classes, or like the Spartan race, or which is obstacle course racing. And one of the things that I noticed is that you depicted like the various steps that it takes in order to perform a certain kind of race, the various steps, the various stages, the various aspects that are involved in that. You can show the pros and cons of pacing. For example, when you're doing an Ironman marathon, and you're like riding an insane amount of miles, and you're running, and you're swimming for miles, and it's just total torture. And so what you could do is you can talk about using the pros and cons of the different types of bike materials, or the different types of shoe materials that can be used in the actual race to really show which ones have the advantage, which ones have the benefit, if not, and which ones do not have the benefit. There's a great documentary called Icarus on Netflix, which talks about performance enhancing drugs, and how this one individual was able to really enhance his performance by using performance enhancing drugs. And then he figured out a way to hide it. He used like a Russian scientist to help him dope properly, which is not even necessarily a good thing, but it's a fascinating watch. So if you ever want to see in the very competitive world of bike racing or of running or of swimming. And there's a lot of things that are going on there behind the scenes. So you could show the pros and cons of various types of strategies. So that's objects and visual images. Now let's talk a little bit about using PowerPoint and presentation software. Now we're using presentation software just to do this presentation, and there's upsides and then there's downsides to this kind of approach. So when we're talking about presentation software, we're talking about using PowerPoint. And when you're using PowerPoint, remember that the PowerPoint functions as a supplement. There's less content is more. So you see there's two different ones, two different examples, one that is written out in detail, and then there's one that has the picture and a little bit of words. So what you want to do is you want to focus on the images. Now, most of you in your presentations, you did just that. You focused on the images, and which is excellent strategy to use, because less is more, because the image is what carries the presentation. You're going to be talking verbally out loud what it is that you're presenting on. So because you're going to be talking and presenting out loud, you don't need to go out there and write everything out that whatever it is that you're saying on the PowerPoint. It just ends up being a little too busy, a little bit too much content, a little bit too much extra material. So what you want to do is you want to keep it nice, short, simple, sweet, and to the point. So when you're using PowerPoint, use images, and use images to take up the whole pictures. And some of you sent me just absolutely gorgeous, stunning PowerPoints where you just, the pictures were just large and there was virtually no text, or if there was text, there was very little text, and it was not distracting in any sort of way. So it was great job on your behalf. Now you want to also consider forum or audience. So for example, you want to consider the example of um, the location for where you're speaking at. So if you're presenting and you have a PowerPoint, but you're presenting in the woods or like at a kids camp or something, then you have to realize that if you don't have the right equipment, you're going to be stuck. So make sure you have the right equipment for the situation. Figure out who your audience is, where the location is. So those are two important ones. So for example, if you're talking about movie, the example "Do the Right Thing" movie in 1989, that movie is an old movie. So if you're going to be citing that movie, you're going to be talking to probably adults who are in their 40s, or some those adults who may have seen that movie growing up. Now, if you're talking about Juno, and it was a 2007 movie, then you might be talking to an audience who is maybe in their late 20s, early 30s. Now, if you're talking about the movie, I'm totally drawing a blank. A Joker, let's say that's always a good one to go back to. If you're talking about the movie The Joker, then that would be more of a generation. That's your generation. That's your timeline. The age for most of you who are 18 to 22, somewhere in that range. I know there's some exceptions in my classes, but for the most part, if we're talking about that movie, it would be relevant to your audience because that's where you grew up. Where you grew up on movies like that. Now, when we're talking about practical tips, you want to be aware of a couple of things. You want to be aware of prior exposure to visual aid. So did the person see this visual aid already, and what was their response? So what kind of response did this audience have to this visual aid? The visual aid needs to support the point, so it needs to actually support what it is that you're talking about. It needs to be able to be visible, so you need to be able to see it and make sure people can see and hear the aid. So make sure that you can be heard loud and clear. Like one thing that you want to make sure is that when you're presenting your speeches and presentations, when you're giving me your recordings, that the sound and the ability for me to be able to hear it is there. And for the most of you, it was not a problem. Most of you have high-tech phones that are more complicated than a spaceship, and so you're able to finesse a good presentation, and it sounds great, sounds clear. There's very few issues there. So just a couple of things to keep in mind as you're putting together your presentation. Make sure you're not getting in the way of your presentation. Some of you actually did a presentation where you used TV as a screen to show your PowerPoint as you were presenting, which was kudos to you. That was awesome. That was very impressive. So good job doing that and not getting in the way of the presentation. It's very impressive with some of the workarounds that you have done. So I applaud you for that. And that's pretty much wraps up the chapter on presentation aids. Please keep in mind that good presentation aids take time to develop. It takes work, it takes effort, it takes time, perseverance, it takes all of those things. But a good presentation aid really is worth it's really worth a lot. It's going to really make your presentation stand out and be memorable. As I can even still imagine some of the images from some of your presentations, because the images were just so powerful and so engaging. Like it's night and day between having no images and having images. So make sure to do that yourself. Okay. Thank you so much for your time, and I will see you next time.